Lewis Hamilton's struggles at Ferrari cannot be reduced to a single failure, a flawed statistic, or a simplistic narrative about decline. 2025, truly exposed, was a convergence of pressures that Formula One rarely aligned so brutally at once. A demanding regulatory transition, a car built around narrow tolerances, a team still correcting structural weaknesses, and a driver arriving at the most emotionally intense organization in the sport, at the most unforgiving moment of its technical cycle. This was not a loss of talent, it was a loss of margin. From the outside, the numbers appear damning. 0 podiums across a full season, 6th in the Drivers' Championship, an 86-point deficit to Charles Leclerc. But numbers without context are poor tools in Formula One analysis. This is not a spec category where results directly reflect driver performance. Hamilton did not underperform in isolation. He entered an ecosystem that demanded instant fluency while offering minimal tolerance for adaptation. This is where Jock Clear's intervention becomes so important. Clear is not a detached commentator. He worked with Hamilton during his early Mercedes years and later became deeply embedded within Ferrari's technical and performance structure. When he says Hamilton really had a tough time, he's not offering sympathy. He is offering diagnosis. Clear understands how deeply car behavior, organizational flow, and human energy interact in elite performance. Clear's most controversial statement was not that Hamilton struggled, but that it was reassuring to see how difficult the challenge was. At first glance, this sounds provocative, but from a performance engineering perspective, it is entirely logical. Formula One is defined by complexity. If a 7-time world champion could arrive at a new team and immediately dominate, it would suggest the sport had become shallow. Clear is effectively defending the integrity of Formula One by reminding people that adaptation is not optional even for legends. I agree with Clear on this point. Hamilton's struggle does not diminish him. It reinforces how demanding modern Formula One has become. The idea that greatness should override context is a fantasy. Performance is always conditional on machinery, environment, timing, and mental bandwidth. Their argument is not that Hamilton failed, but that the task was never meant to be easy. Technically, the SF-25 amplified every difficulty. Its defining weakness was extreme ride height sensitivity, which cascaded into plank wear management. Conservative setups and compromised aerodynamic efficiency. Ferrari often arrived at race weekends already limited by legality concerns. When a car requires protection before it can be pushed, the driver is forced into reactive driving rather than instinctive execution. For Hamilton, this was particularly damaging. His driving style depends on trust in rear stability under braking and progressive load transfer on corner entry. The SF-25 frequently denied him that trust. Clear alludes to this indirectly by acknowledging how mentally draining the season became. When effort repeatedly fails to convert into reward, fatigue becomes cumulative rather than temporary. The internal comparison with Leclerc, while unavoidable, also requires nuance. Leclerc's 7 podiums were not evidence that the car suited him perfectly. They were evidence of familiarity. He has spent his entire Formula One career within Ferrari's operational language. He understands how Ferrari cars misbehave, where compromises are unavoidable, and how to extract performance even when the platform is unstable. That knowledge is invisible on timing sheets, but decisive over a season. Clear's comparison with Carlos SCS at Williams is particularly revealing. SCS struggled badly early on, failing to finish higher than 8th in his first 16 races before gradually unlocking performance later in the year. The lesson is uncomfortable but consistent across Formula One history. Adaptation precedes performance, not reputation. Hamilton's frustration stems precisely from knowing this truth while being judged as if it did not apply to him. This is where Hamilton's "not even on my level" comment must be understood properly. It was not arrogance in isolation, it was psychological defense. Hamilton was drawing a line between his internal process and external judgment. However, as Ralf Schumacher later suggested, confidence without reflection risks isolation. Jock Clear's contribution sits perfectly between those two extremes, validating the difficulty while still encouraging patience and recalibration. Age inevitably enters the discussion, but often incorrectly. At 41, Hamilton has not lost reaction speed or race intelligence. What changes with age is energy management. A 24-race calendar, relentless travel, and Ferrari's media exposure erode recovery windows. Hamilton's own admission that 2025 was very draining aligns precisely with what performance science would predict under such conditions. This is precisely why Jock Clear's description of Hamilton's struggles as reassuring deserves far more attention than it has received. In a sport built on marginal gains and relentless complexity, Formula One should be brutally difficult, even for its most decorated figures. Past success guaranteed immediate dominance. The entire competitive framework would collapse into predictability. Clear is not excusing Hamilton's results. He is defending the intellectual honesty of the sport itself. Adaptation is not optional in Formula One. It is the entry fee regardless of how many titles sit on your resume. The significance of this becomes even clearer when viewed through the lens of the 2026 regulations. These rules are not an evolution, they are a reset. Smaller and lighter cars reduce inertia, making responses sharper and less forgiving. Active aerodynamics introduce constant balance shifts mid-lap. 50/50 split between combustion and electrical power forces drivers to manage energy deployment almost corner by corner. The result is not just a faster car, but a more cognitively demanding one. Clear's warning that the new cars may become more nervous is not opinion or pessimism. It is a logical consequence of regulation design. Active aero alters load transfer dynamically. Lighter cars react more aggressively to inputs. Energy deployment changes torque characteristics corner to corner. These factors compound. Driver is no longer simply driving the car. He is actively managing multiple systems in real time at extreme speed. This is where driver style becomes decisive rather than secondary. Charles Leclerc thrives in cars that rotate sharply, respond instantly, and reward aggression on entry. Lewis Hamilton historically has extracted his greatest performances from cars that provide a stable rear platform, predictable braking behavior, and progressive load buildup. Neither approach is superior in isolation. But under regulation resets, alignment between car philosophy and driver instinct becomes everything. If Ferrari's 2026 concept leans too far towards nervous responsiveness, Hamilton will again be placed into adaptation mode rather than exploitation mode. That distinction matters enormously. Adaptation consumes mental bandwidth, exploitation frees it. Drivers win championships not when they are constantly solving problems, but when the car allows them to operate instinctively, freeing attention for racecraft, strategy, and tire management. I think this is the core issue that defined Hamilton's 2025 season. It was never about raw pace, motivation, or ability. It was about alignment between car behavior, development, direction, and driver intuition. That alignment simply never existed. The SF25 asked questions Hamilton could not answer consistently, not because he lacked skill, but because the car itself offered contradictory feedback. Formula One punishes hesitation mercilessly. A fraction of doubt on corner entry becomes tire degradation. Tire degradation becomes compromised strategy. Compromise strategy becomes anonymous results. This cascade defined Hamilton's Ferrari debut season far more accurately than any headline statistic. What gives me confidence in Hamilton's future is not blind belief or nostalgia, but his response to adversity. Instead of denial or deflection, he has opted for structural change. He has acknowledged the toll of 2025, described it openly as very draining, and begun reshaping his preparation accordingly. Reducing unnecessary travel strain, restructuring routines, and reclaiming control over his time are not signs of weakness. They are signs of elite self-management. This is how drivers extend competitiveness at the highest level, not by pretending nothing has changed, but by recognizing precisely what has changed and responding deliberately. Hamilton's approach suggests a driver who understands that longevity in Formula One is earned through efficiency, not stubbornness. Ferrari's own internal reset for 2026 amplifies this potential. A new car, a fundamentally different power unit philosophy, and a more disciplined testing structure remove many of the inherited constraints Hamilton faced in 2025. For the first time since arriving in Maranello, he will not be adapting to a concept designed around someone else. He will be part of the foundational phase that matters more than most people realize. Drivers influence cars most when concepts are still fluid. Once architecture is locked, even the greatest feedback becomes compromise. The SF26 represents Hamilton's first genuine opportunity to shape Ferrari rather than survive it. This is why I completely reject the idea that 2025 damaged Lewis Hamilton's legacy. Transitional seasons do not define legacies. Responses to adversity do. Schumacher endured years of struggle at Ferrari. Alonso suffered frustration and political conflict. Vettel faced decline narratives that history later softened. What matters is not the valley, but what follows it. Hamilton's struggle at Ferrari is not a story of decline. It is a story of timing, complexity, and resistance.